Hey there, did you know that the words you're using every single day hold a kind of secret history? Yeah, they're like these tiny little fossils. And today, we're going to become linguistic detectives. We're going to learn how to read them to uncover the story of our most distant ancestors. It all starts with these simple, kind of weird questions, right? Like, why are some of our plurals so strange? We say books, cats, and dogs. But then we say feet, mice, and geese. It just feels random. But guess what? It's not. These little oddities are actually clues. They're echoes from a much, much older version of our own language. And when I say older, I mean way older. Just take a look at this. This is a little piece from the epic poem Beowulf. Now, at first glance, you might think it's German, maybe even Dutch. But nope, that is English. The language we spoke 1,000 years ago is almost totally unrecognizable to us now. And that brings us to the central mystery. I mean, if a language can change this much in just 1,000 years, how on earth can we look back even further? How do linguists trace the family tree for languages that left no written record at all? It really seems impossible, but it turns out they have this brilliant set of tools to do exactly that. Okay, so the first step in solving this whole mystery is to stop looking at the letters and start listening to the sounds. You see, the biggest clues aren't in the spelling, they are hidden in the way languages actually sound and how those sounds have systematically shifted over hundreds, even thousands of years. And here is the absolute key to everything. While language is always, always changing, that change isn't just random chaos. Not at all. Historical linguists discovered that sound changes are actually incredibly regular. They follow rules. And if you can figure out the rules, you can essentially rewind the clock. The main rule is something called systematic sound change. And you can think of it like a detective who finds the exact same, really unique footprint at dozens of different crime scenes. When a sound starts to shift in a language, it doesn't just change in one random word. Oh no, it changes in every single word where that sound shows up in a similar spot. It's like a chain reaction. Let me show you a perfect example of this in action, the Great Vowel Shift. So, between about Chaucer's time and Shakespeare's time, all the long vowels in English just started moving. A word like bite used to be pronounced a lot more like beat at. The word feet sounded more like fate. This wasn't something people decided to do, it was just a massive, systematic shift that happened across the entire language. Okay, so once we get our heads around the fact that sounds change in these predictable ways, we can zoom out. We can start looking for patterns, not just inside one language, but between different languages to see which ones might actually be related. And the key piece of evidence for this whole thing, it's something called cognates. These are words in different languages that look and sound similar because they both evolved from the very same word in a shared parent language. They are, and this is the best way to think of it, the linguistic equivalent of DNA evidence. They prove a family relationship. Just look at some basic numbers. You don't need to be a linguist to see this. The English, two, and the German, zwei, they're obviously related. Same with the Spanish, dos, and the French, deux, clearly siblings. But you can also see how the English-German pair is different from the Spanish-French pair. The branches of the family tree are right there in the words themselves. And by finding thousands and thousands of these cognates, linguists can build out these enormous family trees. This here is just a tiny piece of the giant Indo-European family, which stretches all the way from Europe to northern India. You can see English and German are on one branch, French and Spanish are on another, but they all trace back to one single common ancestor. But this is where it gets, honestly, truly mind-blowing. Because finding the family tree, that's not even the end goal. Using all these clues, linguists can do something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. They can actually reconstruct the lost ancestor language itself. Their ultimate superpower for this job is called the comparative method. It's this rigorous scientific process that lets us work backwards from the languages we know today, the daughter languages, to figure out what their parent language must have sounded like. We can actually hear echoes of a language that's been silent for millennia. So how does it work? Well, it's basically a three-step process. First, you gather up huge lists of those cognates we talked about. Second, you line them up and you find the systematic sound patterns. Like, you might notice that where English has a T sound, German often has a Z sound. And third, you use those patterns like a formula to reverse the changes and rebuild the original ancestral word. And what you get at the end of all that work is what we call a proto-language. This is a scientific reconstruction, a hypothesis, of an ancient language that was never written down. The ancestor of that massive family tree we just saw is called Proto-Indo-European, or PIE for short. It was probably spoken over 5,000 years ago, and thanks to this method, we have a really good idea of what it sounded and felt like. So, why? Why do all of this? What is the payoff for all this intense detective work? Well, this is the really amazing part. Because by reconstructing the vocabulary of a lost language, we open a window directly into the world of the people who actually spoke it. It's because these words that we rebuild, they give us these incredible glimpses into the daily lives, the culture, and the environment of people who lived thousands and thousands of years ago. Think about it this way. A people's vocabulary is basically a map of their world, right? If they had a word for something, it means they knew about it, it was part of their lives. So these reconstructed words are like linguistic fossils that let us paint a surprisingly detailed picture of a society that vanished a long, long time ago. So what have we learned about these Proto-Indo-Europeans? Well, their vocabulary tells us a ton. We know they had words for wolves and bears. We know they were farmers who plowed and sowed and ground grain. They had domesticated cattle and sheep. We even know about their social structure because they had very specific words for complex family relationships, like father-in-law and daughter-in-law. And here is the absolute clincher. This isn't just some language game. This linguistic evidence often lines up perfectly with what archaeologists are digging out of the ground. Linguists reconstructed the word kwiklos, which means wheel. And what do you know, archaeologists have found physical evidence of wheeled vehicles in the exact region and from the exact time period where we think the Proto-Indo-Europeans lived. The science actually checks out. So what's the big takeaway from all this? The crucial point is that language is so much more than just a tool we use to talk to each other. It's a living, breathing archive of human history. Every word, every sound, every weird little grammatical rule is a clue to our collective past. Your own language, the one you're using right now to think your thoughts, it's a living fossil. It's carrying the story of thousands of years of human experience. And it really makes you wonder, right? 5,000 years from now, what will the evolution of our modern words like tweet, selfie, or crypto, what will those words reveal to future linguists about the world that we live in today?